Okay, well, the 2025 season will begin before too long. We still have free agency, we still have the draft, but I figured let's kind of, before we even have all of that happen, let's do a, tier ranking, power rankings video, kind of discussing where each of these teams are now. I already made individual breakdowns of each team and where they could go from here, so yeah, let's just get into it. Starting off with the Titans. So the 5 categories I have are Super Bowl contenders, and listen, it's football, right? All 32 teams have a greater than 0 chance, but those are the teams that are like serious Super Bowl contenders. Then dark horse teams that could maybe win the Super Bowl, but I wouldn't put in the top tier. Then we have it's possible, but I'd be surprised. That is, it's possible to win the Super Bowl, but I'd be surprised. Then we have probably not Super Bowl, maybe playoffs, and finally just tank. For the Tennessee Titans, who, hey, you have the first overall pick, they have cap space to potentially improve that offensive line. I think that they're definitely in a rebuild. At the end of the day, a quarterback playing in their rookie year usually doesn't go well. Sometimes it does, but those are the exceptions. So I'll say just tank. And tank's probably not the best word for them because you do want to play better with the young quarterback. But I would say view this as a rebuilding year, and we'll see where they can go from there. The Miami Dolphins are an interesting team because, I don't think they're a bad team when healthy. I think Tua's really good when healthy. How many games are you going to get of him? That's a fair question to ask at this point. They're probably going to be a pretty similar roster to what they had last year. You can try to build things through the draft. I don't think they're a horrible team. I just wonder what their ceiling is. So I think I'm going to put them in probably not Super Bowl, but maybe playoffs. The Jets are another team who, in this post-Aaron Rodgers era, what do you do? They have so much dead cap for the next 2 years. They do not have a great draft pick. They're picking 7th. That's not horrible, right? But it's not an amazing draft pick. So where do you go from here? It's hard to imagine them doing anything other than it's hard to imagine them doing anything amazing this season. I'm going to put them in the just tank category as well. I think that's the move. Rebuild for a couple years. It sucks because you rebuilt for a while only to then go all in on a quarterback and didn't work out, but I think that's what they have to do now. The Bengals are next on this list, who I think I'm going to put them in the it's possible to be a Super Bowl contender, but I'd be surprised because you do have the incredible pieces, and we'll see what they do with T. Higgins and Trey Hendrickson and all that, but they still have Jamar Chase, they still have Joe Burrow. It's hard to say it's impossible with those guys, right? So I'm still going to put them there, but just given the way the Bengals have been these past couple of years, they really kind of need Burrow to play hero ball left and right. It kind of reminds me a lot of, if you remember, the New Orleans Saints had some years with Drew Brees where their defenses were just atrocious and Brees was just doing what he can to keep them in the games. Eventually, the Saints had to kind of restructure their team and get better defensively, and then they were able to be competitive again. That's kind of how the Bengals remind me of now, so that's where I'm going to put them here. The Browns are another just tank team. I mean, they're a team that, if we're being honest, that we really screwed up with the Deshaun Watson trade. You got 2 years of paying him. Myles Garrett wants out. Okay, you got to rebuild. It's just kind of where you're at right now. The good news is they do have the number 2 overall pick, so that can help with that. But yeah, they're in a rebuild. The Jaguars they're fascinating as well because I do think they have some pieces. They have a new GM now. I don't think Trevor Lawrence is a horrible quarterback. I know there's a lot of discourse with him. I'll probably make a film study at some point this offseason, really diving into what he can do and what are the issues and all that. I like Liam Cohen as a head coach. I think he's a good X's and O's guy. I do wonder just what the ceiling is of this team for this season. I think I'm going to also put them in the just tank category. I think they just need a year. They need to rebuild for a bit longer. That's what I think of them right now. It's weird, though, because they have a lot of young players, and if those young players step up, maybe I'm being too low on them. So, I don't know. I'm on the fence. Maybe I'll bump them up to this tier, but either way, I'm not too high on Jacksonville as of right now. More than I'm thinking about it more, I feel like they should be above the bottom tier. I'm going to put them in that one, but I don't feel great about this tier either. Not too high on Jacksonville. I don't think a lot of people are, but I don't know. Maybe I'll be wrong. Next up is the Detroit Lions, who, like, you know what? I'm still going to put in the top tier Super Bowl contenders. They were kind of Super Bowl favorites for most of last season. They were NFC favorites for basically every day, essentially, until they lost in the playoffs. Because their defense got so banged up, they weren't really able to do much once they got to the postseason. But this offense was still electric last year. And the defense was, when healthy, very good last year. Now, they got to get healthy again. You can't afford another Aiden Hutchinson injury. And to me, the biggest concern I have with the Lions is losing both coordinators. Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn both got coordinator of the year votes last year. So you have to figure out a way to kind of work around that. And are the new hires going to be able to live up to that? They still have the talent, so I think putting them in this tier feels fair. But I wouldn't be shocked at all if they have a big hit as well, because I do value those coordinators very highly. Just remains to be seen. The Minnesota Vikings are another team where they're fascinating. I don't think they're going to re-sign Sam Darnold. They might. I don't know. I don't think they will. Their defense was really good last year, despite the fact that, like, talent-wise, I don't think it was great. They have room to improve. They're one of the few teams that won, as many games as they did and can still get better, which is cool to see if you're a Vikings fan. Still a lot of really good talent offensively, and you hope in the playoffs you don't lose both of your tackles again, and you can be better there. But are we really going to bet on not a rookie quarterback, but a quarterback in his first season going on a deep run? That's the question. So because of the issues at quarterback, and because I still feel like the defense is more of a well-coached defense than a talented defense, although it could get better, I'm going to put them in the it's possible, but I'd be surprised here, which might feel a little bit low. I did consider them in dark horse, but I think that's just where I have them for now. The Buccaneers are another team who really like this offense and even maybe has potential to get better. We'll see what they do with Godwin. The defense was at times really rough, and the biggest thing they need to do is just get depth, because they keep getting banged up in the secondary and really struggle once they lose players there. So if you can get some depth there, I think that would go a long way. The reality is, though, they need corner help. They need pass rushers off the edge. They could use a linebacker. They need a lot defensively. So, I really like this offense a lot, but I still think I have to put them in the it's possible, but I'd be surprised tier. San Francisco's interesting, and maybe this will be a hot take, but I think I'm going to bump them all the way up to the dark horse category, because they had so many injuries last year, and we saw them just 2 years ago go to the Super Bowl and lose to the Chiefs. Look at the Eagles, right? The Eagles, who had a much better season in between their 2 Super Bowl appearances, but still, they lost a Super Bowl to the Chiefs, then got knocked out in the first round of the playoffs, and then won the Super Bowl. It can happen, right? They have to stay healthier, and there still are improvements to this roster they have to make. But again, you think about all the key players that they lost. They lost Christian McCaffrey. Everyone was hurt at some point. All the key players were hurt. Again, are Deebo Samuel's best days behind him? Are Brandon Ayuk's best days behind him? You need another great year out of Brandon Ayuk. You need Samuel to either bounce back, or maybe they get rid of the contract. I don't know. But that's just kind of where they're at right now. They still have enough really good pieces on both offense and defense, though, and I still trust Kyle Shanahan. That's why I'm willing to say, hey, if it all works out, yeah, this team could be a Super Bowl contender, so that's why I have them there. Next up are the Atlanta Falcons, who, again, there was a lot of discourse about the Michael Penix and Kirk Cousins situation, but the good news about putting debatably too much resources into the quarterback position is they ended up with a guy who seems to be a good quarterback. Michael Penix played very well towards the end of last season. Again, it sucks that you're going to be paying Cousins for the next 2 years now, about $40 million this next year, about $20 million the following year, or you could pay him $60 million this year, but you're already over the cap, so you'd have to put $20 million down the road next year. So either way, that's essentially what you're doing. That being said, still a lot of really good offensive pieces. I still like this secondary. I kind of feel like they're a couple pieces away defensively to at least being all right. If they can be an all right defense with a good offense, there's potential here. So I'm going to, similar to Tampa Bay, put them into it's possible. I'd still be surprised. There's still a lot of moves they have to make. But yeah, I don't think this team is in an awful spot at all. Even though obviously you'd love to not have to pay Cousins that money. It is what it is. You can still be competitive with paying a quarterback big money that you're not playing. Like, look at Denver, right? It can happen. Next up is the Baltimore Ravens, who, you got to put in the top tier, right? They're a team that, consistently it feels like what is the story with the Ravens? We consistently feel like in the playoffs, okay, this team's really good. They have a great roster. They can make stuff happen. And consistently, they kind of beat themselves, I feel like, right? That's just story year in and year out. And while Lamar gets all the criticism because he's the quarterback, I feel like in each of these playoff games, there's other huge mistakes. The Zay Flowers fumble against Kansas City might have been the difference in that game. The Mark Andrews fumble against Buffalo might have been the difference in that game, right? And the Mark Andrews drop at the end. Again, this is a really talented roster. Talent isn't their issue, and so because of that, I'm still going to put them in the Super Bowl contenders tier. You then have the Chicago Bears, who, okay, I really like Ben Johnson. I'm a pro Ben Johnson guy. I was, like pretty much everyone else, was blown away by Caleb Williams in college. Definitely has struggled a bit, to say the least, at the NFL level. I think part of it was the receiving core did not live up to the hype. I don't think the offensive line's as bad as people make it out to be, but you could still probably use another guy there. And then defense was very good. The thing is, you hope that they can the Ben Johnson thing can fix everything, which maybe can happen. I'm definitely not going to put them in a super high tier, but I'll put them in the probably not Super Bowl, but maybe playoffs is kind of where I'm viewing them. And then you have the Dallas Cowboys, who, part of the interesting thing about a tier list like this is when I'm only thinking how can you get to the Super Bowl and what are your Super Bowl odds, as opposed to what are, how good do I think you will be. If I'm saying who do I think will be better, the Cowboys or the Bears, there's kind of no question I'm going to bet on the Cowboys, I feel like, right? They seemingly, when healthy, are at least going to be like a 9-win team. But at the same time, I don't really see the way that they can get more than that to be like the best team in football, best team in the NFC, and be winning a Super Bowl. I just don't really see that happening. So I'm going to put them in the same tier as the Bears, even if I think their odds of making the playoffs are higher. I don't know if I think that their odds of winning a Super Bowl are particularly high. That's kind of how I've always felt about the Cowboys. Cowboys fans, I have to say, on a side note, I actually find Cowboys fans pretty cool. Like, I haven't had really any issues with them, despite the fact that I've been pretty harsh on them for like my entire YouTube channel career. But I do feel like some people will say I'm always too low on the Cowboys, but usually I end up being right, that they're usually ending up going one and done in the playoffs, or maybe winning a playoff game, but then getting knocked out there. But they're rarely as bad as they were last year as well. Have a better draft pick. We'll see what they do with it. The Texans are, again, such a fascinating team because 2 years ago, we were talking about them as, wow, this team could maybe be the next team in the AFC. Could they be challenging with these big three at this point? Because the Bengals missed the playoffs the past 2 years. So the big three of Baltimore, Buffalo, and Kansas City, and really it's the big one with Kansas City. Could the Texans challenge that? And then they had this underwhelming regular season, but then in the playoffs looked like a real team again and looked like kind of what we thought they would be heading into the year. Definitely getting Tank Dell healthy again would help a lot. And they're probably going to lose Diggs. He's a free agent, so that would be a bummer because they did trade some draft capital to get him. But ultimately, I still like this roster. I don't know where I put them. I don't think I can quite go dark horse for them. I think I have to stick with it's possible, but I'd be surprised. They're kind of going to be a pretty similar team next year, and I think they just need to, quite frankly, play better if they're going to have a real chance. The Colts, who I'm willing to say probably not Super Bowl, but maybe playoffs with the Colts. And my biggest reason is I think the quarterback play last year was bad. And if they can get just decent quarterback play, I think we saw Gardner Minshew nearly get them to the playoffs. If they do go for a Sam Darnold, or I don't know what they decide to do, but if they decide something like that, or if Richardson just plays better, I think this team could maybe be a playoff team because I do think they have talent around the quarterback position, but there is a chance that if the quarterback position continues to struggle, then they could continue to struggle. They were in contention last year and I never thought they were a great team, but they were in contention. And if Jonathan Taylor doesn't drop the ball at the 1 yard line, who knows? Maybe they find a way to get into the playoffs. So yeah, the Los Angeles Rams are. They're interesting. I mean, there's talk about potentially trading Stafford, trading Cooper Kupp. I get Cooper Kupp. That makes sense to me. Trading Stafford, I think, would be insane, personally. Although I think some of that is just they're trying to figure out how to work his contract. I don't know. I'm going to still put it's possible, but I'd be surprised. Because, I like Stafford a lot, and I think that he does play well in the big moments, right? This is still a team that I think could use some offensive line help, although part of their issues last year were just injuries, but I think they could still use some offensive line help. This is the team that could use some secondary help especially, and, they've got a lot of players who are getting older there, specifically Stafford's getting older. How long is he going to be this good? That being said, a lot of young players that could step up as well. You could talk me in the dark horse with them. As of right now, though, I think I would still be a little surprised, but they're a very good team. You know what? Just thinking about it, I'll bump them up a little bit. Why not? Let's put them in dark horse. They feel similar enough to the 49ers. I changed my mind while talking about them. The Chargers are next on this list, who, again, you have the Jim Harbaugh stuff. They had this unbelievable season with also a very disappointing ending with the Justin Herbert not playing well at all against Houston. They get knocked out in round 1. Again, I think some of that stuff gets overblown. He had a bad game. I didn't think he was actually bad against Jacksonville. That was just kind of a team collapse, in my opinion. But nonetheless, okay, fine. I get the narrative, but there's still a lot to like about this Chargers team. If they can help, their defense was awesome last year. If they can help out the receiving core, get a better receiving core. They have a really good offensive line. This team could be very good. Is it crazy of a hot take to put them in dark horse, or do I put them in it's possible, but I'd be surprised? I'm just trying to think. Comparing them to the teams below, I think I like Herbert more than the other quarterbacks below, and I think that has to matter. So, yeah, I'm going to put them in dark horse. Again, what I mean is I'm talking about the ceiling here, not necessarily saying that I think the Chargers will definitely be better than Minnesota next year, but I feel like they have just a higher ceiling than Minnesota, if that makes sense. Next up is the Raiders, and Raiders fans, I love you, but this is just tank. It's tough. They keep winning these meaningless games at the end of the season, not allowing them to get a top draft pick. How do you get a quarterback? I don't know. Maybe you trade up for Shedeur Sanders. Maybe you don't even have to trade up for Shedeur Sanders. I don't know. But yeah, they need to they need to rebuild, continue to rebuild. You need to add Brock Bowers. He seems like a guy who could be a core of this franchise for the next 10 years. That's cool. But yeah, as a whole, need to continue to rebuild. Washington, they're an interesting team. Do I put them in the Super Bowl contenders tier, or do I put them in the dark horse tier? You know what? Let's put them in Super Bowl contenders, because not only did their offense play so well last year, they also, have a ton of cap space to help out their defense. A lot of people have made the comparison with them and with Houston, and while I do understand it, you compare a lot of advanced numbers. Daniels kind of blew Stroud out of the water last season in terms of the EPA stuff was just crazy. Not that that's the end all be all, but it was insane. Part of that was how often they went for it on fourth downs, I think. But still, really good stuff there. And again, you have the cap space to help out the defense. And I'll say this as well, CJ Stroud made the divisional round 2 years ago. Jaden Daniels made the conference championship. That's a pretty big, leap right there. So it's, it's one extra game, but still, that feels like it's a pretty big leap. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm being too high on them. I should probably put them in dark horse, but whatever. Let's have some fun with it. The Chiefs are obviously Super Bowl contenders. Everyone is saying the witch is dead and celebrating. Listen, you can't help but feel a little bit like this is the horror movie when it seems like the villain is dead and everyone's happy and crying and hugging, and then you see the guy in the mask pop out of from behind the window, right? Don't sleep on the Chiefs just yet. They are still very much alive, and while yes, they're starting to have to pay some of those guys from those great back-to-back drafts, they should be okay for at least this year. So, yeah, they're Super Bowl contenders. Of course they are. The Saints are a team that, again, okay, can you get a healthy season out of Derek Carr? Well, hasn't happened these past couple of years, but if you do, I think that could help. I still don't like this offensive line at all when it comes to pass blocking. The receiving core remains to be seen. What they can do. They've, again, when healthy are all right, but have struggled to stay healthy. We have a new defensive coordinator, Brandon Staley, there, who I don't know what to make of that. Staley was a great defensive coordinator with the Rams. He also had Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Donald, but he was legitimately great with them too. Both things were true there. I don't know what to make of this Saints team. I think some would argue that they should be in probably not Super Bowl, maybe playoffs. I am not going to put them there. I am putting them in the just tank category. The Giants are just tank. That's obvious. That's an easy one. I mean, it is what it is. They need like 17 starters. I actually think in some ways them not having a top 2 pick could help them. Maybe they don't even worry about quarterback and just focus on building the roster out, which I think is what they need to do. The Eagles, how could you even argue they shouldn't be Super Bowl contenders? They just won the Super Bowl, and while they do have some free agents, it's not like they have a ton of free agents they have to sign. So yeah, that's a pretty obvious one for me. The Steelers, I mean, I think I have to put them in the it's possible, but I'd be surprised tier, right? Like, that just feels fair. Honestly, maybe this is too high now that I'm thinking about it. Because is it possible? I mean, I feel like they're similar to Dallas now that I think about it. We're like, okay, listen, I think you're going to be a quality team. I think I would bet on Pittsburgh being better than just a quality team. But, like, at the end of the day, when it comes to winning a Super Bowl, how do you get over the hump? How do you improve your roster that much to where you can stop being one and done in the playoffs and being more than that? I just don't see it, and I bet on the Steelers before, and I keep getting burned. I'm not doing it again. That's just kind of how I view them right now. The Denver Broncos, I do feel like have higher potential. They're starting to get some cap space back after moving on from that Russell Wilson thing. Obviously, Bo Nix on a rookie deal helps. Can Bo Nix continue to improve? I still think this team needs receiving help. I know Sean Payton doesn't love to pump resources in there, but I think they could use some receiving help. Defense is good. Offensive line's really good. Bo Nix is good. Need to help out the receiving core. So I'll put them in it's possible, but I'd be surprised. Yeah, sure, it's possible they could go on a deep playoff run. Why not? Next, we have the Green Bay Packers, who... What do we do with the Green Bay Packers? I mean, I don't know. I feel like I'm the lowest person in the world on Jordan Love. A lot of people really like him and talk about him as though he's one of the, maybe not top 5 quarterbacks, but like top 10. At times he's that, but then at times he's not, and he's been very inconsistent over the course of his career. He has. I get that part of his issues early on this year were due to injury, but also is that just an excuse? Who can say, right? That being said, I still love this coaching staff. Love does have that high potential, and I think if they could get a number 1 receiver, their defense played really well last year. I'll put them in it's possible, but I'd be surprised, right? That feels, again, I don't know why this, I'm clicking it and nothing's happening. Oh, here we go. Okay, figured that out. My boomer moment, I suppose, not being able to figure out how to click the Packers logo. But yeah, I'm going to put them in the it's possible, but I'd be surprised here. That feels fair. The Panthers, listen, Bryce Young played great at the end of last year. There's still a ton of just issues with this roster right now. They're in a rebuild. It's okay to be in a rebuild. I'm not going to put them in just tank, but I think probably not Super Bowl, maybe playoffs feels like a fair tier for them. The Cardinals are next on this list, who once again had, I feel like for them, going into the year last year, there was a lot of questions. Okay, what is Kyler Murray? Because he's gotten injured and had his inconsistent moments, right? We wanted to see a full season out of him. We got that. We wanted to see, okay, Marvin Harrison Jr., great prospect. Is it going to work in the NFL? Sometimes great prospects don't work in the NFL. How would this defense, which doesn't seem to have a lot of great talent on it, work? How would a lot of these young players step up? Most of these questions were answered in positive ways. Kyler looked good. The offense around him looked good. Marvin Harrison Jr. looked good. Trey McBride is an elite level tight end. He's fantastic. The defense, still not great, but was serviceable last year. Still a bit of inconsistency with Kyler, but as long as they can continue to build up this defense, I think, yeah, this is a team moving in the right direction. I know it was disappointing to ultimately not make the playoffs, but I think they're moving in the right direction. Another, it's possible, but I'd be surprised level team, in my opinion. You then have the Buffalo Bills, who, again, they were right there. They're playing Kansas City in a coin flip game in the conference championship. I don't know if they beat Philadelphia, but if you're right there, if you're losing a coin flip game in the conference championship, and you're going to have most of the same players, and honestly, some potential to get even a little better, you got to stay in the Super Bowl contenders tier. You just do. So, as of right now, the Super Bowl contenders tier consists of the 4 teams that made the conference championship game, and then also Detroit and Baltimore are the other 2 I threw in there. Seattle, I don't know. I think probably similar to Tampa Bay in that they're, they're a quality team. Maybe you can get in and get hot at the right moment. I like Geno Smith a lot as a quarterback. I think that, and he's on a reasonable deal, that works. They have talent around him, and if the defense can continue to improve, some young players continue to step up, and this coaching staff, which can continue to, I think just kind of get everyone on the same page on a lot of this stuff. Remember, there was a point when we all thought Seattle was going to make the playoffs, and then the Rams beat the Bills, and they got hot, and the Rams found a way to win the division. But Seattle was right there, so I still like the Seahawks a decent amount. Finally, last on this list is the New England Patriots, who, my podcast co-host Kyle, big Patriots fan, I think said, there's 2 or 3 guys on this roster we have to keep. You can get rid of everybody else. I like Drake May. I still want to see him in a better situation before I give him a evaluation really in one way or the other. I'm still going to put them in just tank. I know that there is some good pieces with this roster, but as of right now, there's not enough. And the Drake May thing is a good piece. The Mike Vrabel thing is a good piece, but I think they need to improve. Maybe you could talk me into them being a tier ahead, but as of right now, that's where I have them. So yeah, that is my tier list. I'm sure you will have disagreements in the comments below, so feel free to let me know those in the comments below. Always love hearing from you, and of course, as always, thanks for watching.